Hi guys, it's Laura from Day by Day in Our World, and today I wanted to just kind of walk through this set of books I was sent from Memoria Press. Let me see if I can kind of get close in. This is their American Tradition Poetry and Short Stories, so it's covering American literature for 19th and 20th centuries. Let me just reiterate, I was sent this to review as part of the Homeschool Review Crew. The video was not something I was asked to do, it's just something I've elected to do, so you can see a little bit better with flipping through the pages what you include. And in my blog post, there'll be some close-up shots of a few of the pages. So there's three key components for this book. You have the actual anthology book, and as you can see, it is not very thick. We're dealing with poetry and short stories, so they're not going to be very long. It's not like they're putting a complete play in there for people to read. We then have the student guide, so your student will be using those two materials. And then we have the teacher guide to help the homeschool parent or, co-op teacher, whoever is doing the class with them, to walk through the materials. And I just want to show you some of the key features for these. So the first one, move these out of the way, is the actual anthology. So anthologies is really a matter of having, lots of different curated selections for that time period. So like I said, it's 19th and 20th century American for poetry and short stories. However, they do include, let me kind of close up here, they've got them grouped by person, and some of them have multiple selections. And then they also have this appendix, which has British poetry towards the back from the same time period. And who doesn't like limericks? Okay, so then when you come in here, there's the very first thing that your student's going to work through is this little intro. So this is the selection they're going to be reading. It sort of gives you a time period for what we're dealing with. And they mention some of the different people that they're going to read. Then for each selection, it really is just the text. There's numbers to help you with finding things. There are some illustrations in here for the different ones. There's also some notes and postscripts in here as well. So this is, and that's basically what it goes through. And then, like I said, at the end is some British literature or selections. So the student guide, say they have their intro here. The student guide starts off, it's going to talk to them a little bit about how they're going to use this text, how they're going to walk through it, and how we're going to find what they call the central one idea for each of the different components and the 4 stages that walk through it. With the intro, they walk the student through how they recommend marking up the book. Now, this is where I'll confess I am not one that likes to write in my textbooks. That's why I almost always bought new in college. However, the price point for this selection is kept relatively low, so it wouldn't bother me as much if your student's willing to do it. So they talk about, underlining the important passages, putting a vertical line to the ones that you consider from those to be the most important, then the key ones, and then making some notes in the margin. So that's how they talk about how to mark up a book. Now, for the introduction, they just have some comprehension questions. Some of them are even kind of fill in the blank, as you can see. And this is just to give them a chance to read a selection and learn how to mark up the book. Then we move into specifics. So in this case, we have Rip Van Winkle, which, let's see, goes from page 4 to 15. So it's 11 pages, that's not even a full page there. So 11 pages long, it's a short story. It's not a very long selection. However, with this program, you're going to dig a little deeper than just reading it and saying, oh, what was it about? And whatnot, and leave it at that. So you have this central quote. You have some preparation, the pre-grammar, and this is really trying to go from what they already have experienced, what they already know, and try to get them starting to think about what they're going to be looking for and learning from this selection. The grammar, the second stage, the presentation stage, they start off with these reading notes. So they give them some information, and sometimes they do reference which paragraph things go into, a little bit about the author and people. Then we go into words to be defined. Now, I still told my son he should grab a dictionary. Because if you don't have a clue from reading these sentences, so the first one, you can see you have the words highlighted. You're going to read this, and then they're supposed to match it with here in the definition bank. And then after they've done this is when they're going to actually read the selection. Now they do mention, just like the other one, they show you paragraphs. So if you want to go and say, demand in an austere tone, I'm not entirely sure what that is. They can, as they're reading, they can go to the book and they can find paragraph 32. And sometimes you can really get a sense of what's going on. Then we go, after they've read the selection, you go into comprehension questions. You can see there's a mix of multiple choice, or some people like to say multiple guess, and then some that are a little bit more for detail. And each of these selections has a different length of comprehension. The logic stage is when they're going to take what they've read, take what they remember from the story, and they're going to apply some logic. They're going to reason with it. So, with some of these, they lead them with how they're going to do. Some are going to be kind of, a definitive response, and others are not. And it's a fairly long section for this one. And then finally, the rhetoric stage, they're asked, what is it? Summarize the plot. Now, put it in a complete sentence what the central one idea is of the story, and you want to back it up with points that support it, and maybe, picking a quote. Then finally, the homeschool parent, teacher, whoever is working with the student is going to express to them what is perceived as the central one point. And then finally, there's an essay option. And that just that's the whole thing working through here. And in the back, they have it also in the back of the teacher guide, so you can see what it looks like, and I suppose make copies if you needed to. But they have a spot if they're going to do that essay response. And there's more than enough, they say 3 to 5 paragraphs, there's more than enough room for that. And that's sort of the student guide. So now the teacher guide follows along with the student guide, has a little bit about, how they're going to use the study guide. But then there's some notes specific to the teacher. And I want to just kind of point out one thing which I really took to heart, is that you want to apply it to your particular context. So, maybe you're only going to do some. Maybe you're only going to, of the selections. Maybe you're only going to, look at some of the questions, some of the words, and not do the complete thing. Now, ideally, you'd want to work through everything, have them really dig deep. But in my case, what we've elected to do was to do the study guide as doing it orally, verbal response, for a lot of the questions and for the vocabulary. And I will say that I noticed the downside for doing this is if he wants to refresh for the test, he's staring at the blank pages. He doesn't have, if he takes the test right after our discussion, it'd be one thing. But the biggest is that vocabulary. Some of the words that they're using are just not as familiar. And then this is the same as what the student has. Then as you can see, because it's a teacher guide, if there's a definitive response, something that's definitely the answer, or something that's very, very much hitting the key points, they're going to give that to you. So this is where you're going to see it. You're not going to see it this preparation stage. Everybody's response to that is going to be different. The words to be defined, you can see here's the definition bank showing you everything that they have, and you can go and say they couldn't figure out that demanded in an austere tone was severe or strict. You can go through and go over it with them. The comprehension questions, same kind of thing for this section. You're going to have responses. There is a correct answer for that. When you get to the logic stage, there's some, like here, if it's going to be multiple choice, then there's going to be a definitive answer. Then others, it's going to be suggested. So there's still, in this one, there's still a lot of suggested answers. And then here they give us, what one student might write for the summary. But as far as what they're going to write for their central idea, it's going to be individual for the student. Same with how they're going to support it. And then finally, here's what the expressed by the teacher, what's going to be there. And that's what you find for all of that. Now, when you get to the back, you can see they've got tests. In this case, for Rip Van Winkle gets its own, possibly because it's at the beginning. They're trying to really, make sure the student's working through. There's matching. This is going to be with stuff that had to do with the reading notes, stuff that had to do with vocabulary, and then the multiple choice. And like I said, with my son, what I found was that he got this section spot on. This section's where he missed some, and it was usually to do with vocabulary. And then, they have, for the teacher, the answers, because there is a correct answer for each one. And that's sort of what you get. Like I said, you've got teacher guide, student guide, and the actual anthology. And it's all laid out really nicely for a homeschool parent. There's not a lot of prep time for you, which is great when you're dealing with high school. Some of the material is a little bit more challenging, and for some subjects, I really don't want to spend an exorbitant amount of time prepping. And because these are short selections, you can sit down and read them in advance of your student and not feel like you've spent a long time prepping compared to reading entire novels that you have to get through and review, what it is you're going to be working with them on. So thanks for watching. This was Laura, Day by Day in Our World, and taking a look at what you get when you order the Poetry and Short Stories American Literature from Memoria Press. Thanks for watching, and pop on over and see the rest of what we have to say.